Record. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today I have that special person again, and he is a saint reborn. He's here to kind of clear out some of my doubts and your doubts about how to really study Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in an actual natal chart. Like, what is it that we're looking at? Because even though he came before and spoke to us in detail about this beautiful concept of Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, I just was like, I'm still a student in this. Like, I'm so new to it. I'm like, I need somebody to show me how to study this in a Vedic concept. So I had to bring him back. So please help me welcome Ernest Willem. Hello, sir.
Hey there.
So yeah, so this is something I'm like a little, like a preschool student here, wanting to just understand, because all the concept of studying Uranus, Neptune, Pluto from a natal chart, it's all on that Western astrology concept, which just did not resonate how to actually put them in a Vedic context. So I'm like, you're the person, who came and showed it, so you'll be the best source for that.
Sure. All right, so the most important point I can make about using the outer planets is don't expect them to change your predictions.
Okay, see, that's what I was thinking. Like, oh, it's going to change my predictions.
No, it's not going to change your predictions, because all the concrete things that happen are happening because of the visible planets and the Rashis. Okay?
Very interesting.
So when it comes to predictive astrology, the first biggest mistake a person can make is try to use outer planets to predict concrete events. Because what's a concrete event? A concrete event is an event that your senses can see, right?
Yeah.
Well, we can't see Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They're too small, too far away, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to use them for predicting an event. Use your planets. I think one of the biggest mistakes Western astrologers have done, and why they have a hard time predicting specific concrete events, is because they use the outer planets too much. They focus so much on the outer planets, there's like nothing else left, right?
Yeah.
Now that might make a lot of people say, oh, but outer planets are worthless. But see, what you're predicting with the outer planets is what's happening behind the scenes. You're predicting what's invisible, which means you're predicting what's going on within the person. And the only thing that really matters is what's going on in the person. If you get a job or lose a job, if you get married or get divorced, those are just concrete events. Who gives a shit,
Yeah.
What matters is what happens to you as a result of that event happening.
Okay.
And so the way I like to use outer planets primarily is by watching them in transit. Anytime an outer planet makes a 30-degree hit to one of your planets is an important time for you as a person. It's not an important time for you and all the toys in your life and the people in your life and the things in your life. It's an important time for you as a person. The most important times in all of our lives is when we get hit by an outer planet in transit. Because those are the only times we're growing. We're not growing otherwise. You know how lots of times you tell a person, oh, all you need to do is make these changes and be a different type of person and you'll be happy? And Saturn is crossing their 7th house and screwing up their love life, and they won't make those changes, right? They're just going to suffer those changes. We only make changes, we only become a better person or a different person with more options when an outer planet gets done with us. Doesn't happen otherwise. The best things that happen to us happen because the outer planets are indicating that growth. So if a person only wants to predict events, just wants to predict the mundane events without any life attached to them, you're going to get married, you're going to get 3 kids, 1 kid here, 1 kid here. Don't even use outer planets. They're just going to muddle you up, okay?
So let's say in the natal chart, when I'm looking and I'm using the outer planets and I see, let's say, Sun, Saturn, Pluto conjunction. So when I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, so what is happening with this person? I'm like, okay, so if I want to use this, that's where I was just like kind of losing myself.
Okay.
Like,
yeah. So predict whatever you would predict with the Sun-Saturn conjunction.
Okay.
And I'd say, okay, wait a minute. Pluto's with their sun. This means that in this lifetime, one of the biggest lessons they're going to learn is to overcome the strongest, most attached part of their ego, which is Saturn. So this person's going to be struggling to overcome their egocentricity. And any event related to Sun or Saturn that takes place will have a big, like I talked about Pluto, like Shiva, a big ego bashing in store for them. That doesn't change the event. It just shows that through that event, they're overcoming their attachment to their ego. And it'll be a much bigger theme for them. But it's happening inwardly. It's something that's happening in their mind, in their hearts, in their emotions. It's not going to change that event. So say they're a Taurus Lagna. For Taurus Lagna, Sun is the auspicious fourth lord, Saturn's a yoga karaka. It's the only time you can have a Saturn-Sun conjunction and have it give you fame is for Taurus Lagna. So let's say that person is a Taurus Lagna. Sun-Saturn's going to give them fame, but along with that fame will be a lot of ego destruction. Their ego will actually get challenged with that fame. And they'll overcome their ego as they crawl, they move up that ladder of success. It'll cause them to have issues with their ego that is painful to them that they have to get over. Okay? Let's say we've got a Sun-Saturn conjunction for Leo Lagna. That's not a Raj Yoga anymore, right?
Yeah.
That's the Shubha Lagna Lord with the Ashubha Saturn 6th and 7th Lord. So now we don't have a yoga there. That yoga is not going to give them success. Instead, what it's going to do, it's going to make them feel very stressed out and demeaned at times because it's a low self-esteem and high stress issue to have a Sun-Saturn conjunction. Pluto's there through the disrespect of that combination, through the disappointment in achieving what they want to achieve because of that combination, due to struggling in relationships that they don't get along with. Their ego is going to get worked out really deeply because Pluto's there. Pluto's just showing us this is what's going to hammer your ego this lifetime. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it doesn't matter. Pluto involved, this is going to hammer your ego.
So let's say in the same scenario for Taurus ascendant, let's say you had Sun, Saturn, and Neptune conjunction. Okay.
So what Neptune is doing, we're sort of going the backwards order. I actually started Uranus. But what Neptune does, Neptune is connecting us to the truth of life on a deeper level, which is that everything is God, everything is Vishnu. It's helping us connect deeper to the essence of life. All right, so in essence, it's spiritualizing our consciousness.
Okay.
But that doesn't change the event. So the Sun-Saturn person who's a Taurus Lagna, the Sun-Saturn yoga is going to give them success. As they achieve that success, it's going to connect them to the beauty of life, to the wholeness of life. And, they'll understand when they have that success that, well, whether it's me or someone else, it's not that big a deal because God is giving me the success and it's all, they connect to it deeper. And whatever their field of success will be, they'll just have a deeper connection in it and see God behind it and just see it beyond this mundane thing. But it'll take on this meaning in their life that allows them to see God in their lives.
Okay.
So Neptune is spiritualizing us, our consciousness, by connecting us to things. Now let's say the Sun-Saturn for Leo, someone who's getting demeaned and getting setbacks. Well, through those setbacks, they'll, start connecting to life more. It'll allow them, being the loser all the time, will allow them to understand the connectivity of life somehow. The spiritualizing process is still going to be there. But the events are totally different, and Neptune's not going to have any effect on the event.
Okay, but it's having an effect on the initial personality, the innate nature of the person.
It determines what's most significantly happening in the person.
Within the person, internally, not externally.
Internally. So let's take a Sun-Saturn Taurus Lagna person who doesn't have Pluto joining it, okay?
Yeah.
He crawls up his success and he's like, wow, this is wonderful, He's like, yeah, this is how life should be. I work hard. I put my time in. I deserve the success. It's all good, right?
Mm-hmm.
He says this, I put the time in. Whenever we say I, it's ego consciousness, right? Well, the Pluto you had Pluto there, and all of a sudden the person can't say I and feel good about themselves. They have to get rid of the ego, even though they're having the very same event of having a good career. So it's how the event is impacting the person that the outer planets are really showing us. Is the event here to break their ego down? That's Pluto. Is the event here so they can connect to life in a bigger way, in a more spiritual way? It's Neptune. If the event is here to help them become the unique individual that they are, someone who feels good about themselves with all their pluses and all their minuses, then Uranus is affecting it.
So, okay, so let's
the event.
So yeah, let's take that Uranus conjunct Saturn Sun for Taurus.
Okay, so when we get the Uranus there, all of these, the success events of the Sun Saturn is going to make the person, it's what's going to make them an individual. Look at it this way. I related Uranus to like Brahma. And we think of Brahma, he shows up in the void, right?
Mm-hmm.
On Vishnu Nadi.
Yeah.
On top of Vishnu's little lotus there and in the void. And all of a sudden he goes, there's nothing here. I'm going to start creating. I'm going to do something interesting, okay? I'm going to do something that is not in my neighborhood, all right? There's this void. I'm going to create something out of nothing. Look at all of us humans when we're born as being this void.
Yeah.
We're just this void of potential. Uranus shows us the things that we are that are unique to us, that make us different from truly different from all the other people. That what comes out of the void of of who we are. So the same way that Brahma creates this wonderful universe out of this void, we all have this void inside of us. And out of this void, we can create something. And that is what makes us unique, that individual capacity to co-create with God. And the people who create things that are new around the block, things like that, you'll oftentimes see they have this Uranus going on because they're expressing their individuality in what they create. So those planets, another way you can look at those planets, they're the ones that are making the person the individual they are. And that's lots of times the easiest way to look at it. We have to first become individualized. Then we can become spiritually connected. And only after we're spiritually connected can we sacrifice the ego. We can't sacrifice the ego because before we're spiritually connected, because there's nothing else left if we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before we can be spiritually connected, we have to be individualized, which means we have to be secure as an individual. We have to say, I live in a world of 6 billion people, and I'm different, and it's all good. That's the first step. We have to become an individual, a unique spark of God, not a spark of God like hundreds of other people. And not only do we have to become that unique spark of God, we have to like it. Now, let's say that unique spark of God is someone who, wherever he goes, gets ridiculed and picked on, like a Sun-Saturn conjunction for Leo or
yeah.
Cancer or something, right? Well, that's the unique spark of God they are. They need to, if Uranus is there with the Saturn and Sun, and they need to grow to being okay with that. They're psychologically healthy when they're like, hey, it's great that everyone wants to pick with me. It's fine with me. It doesn't bother me. I'm not perturbed by it. You know what I mean? Individualization is when we see all of our pluses and all of our minuses, and we don't measure ourselves against them. We don't try to hide what we're ashamed of. We don't try to, get aggrandization for what we're good at. We're just happy to be the thing that we are, whatever it is God made us. We're individualized. We're not playing psychological games anymore. That's what Uranus does. The planets that are influenced with Uranus are the events that are helping us become individualized. Be secure in the unique, freaky being that we are. That unique spark of God that's different than all the other sparks of God.
So let's say if a person had Uranus in the 7th house and you opened up their chart for the natal reading, would the Uranus being in the 7th house bring a unique perspective on their spouse and their married life? Will it affect in any way the character of the spouse? If, let's say, even some planet was sitting there or not sitting there, will that
Okay.
have any effect on the married life?
It won't affect the married life at all. If they've got, you know, 7th Lord in 7th house, the marriage life is going to be good. If 7th Lord is debilitated, the marriage life is going to suck. Uranus there, what it's going to do, it's going to show they're going to become individualized. They're going to become secure as an individual due to the events of their relationship events. That's all it's saying.
Wait a second.
That means they're going to make all their important psychological growth through relationships.
Okay.
Because it's when we're psychologically healthy that we're a true individual. Individualization is the process of becoming free from our psychological complexes to be different than we are, to be better than we are, to be ashamed of what we are. Being free of all those psychological complexes is to be individualized. And that's to be that unique, full spark of God with all the quirks that he made us. That's what Uranus is trying to bring forth into our consciousness.
So Uranus says, don't try to be someone else. Try to be yourself.
Don't be someone else, yeah.
Don't try to copy Michael Jordan. Be your own basketball player that you want to be.
And just because you're doing this and your parents don't like it, don't let it bother you. Don't get depressed over it. Things like that. An individual is what he is, and he doesn't feel bad about what he is, nor does he try to get attention and validation for what he is. He's simply secure in what God made him. He's psychologically healthy.
So let's say then if you saw Pluto in the 7th house sitting on the natal chart.
That means the person is going to have their ego destroyed through their relationships. So let's say they have the planets that show they have a great marriage and a great relationship.
Yeah.
Being in that great place is what's going to cause them to let go of their ego.
So even if the planet is in a good position, Pluto is going to do its work.
It's still going to destroy the ego. That's what it's here for.
But they may not notice it that it's a negative way of
It'll destroy their ego in a nice place.
Okay.
Let's say you take a person and he becomes president.
Yeah.
And all that pressure of having the most powerful position, wouldn't that be a great place to just shred your ego, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, also being the person that everyone picks on is a great place to shred your ego. And every place in between. Sometimes the thing that makes the ego the most scared and makes it run and makes you kill your ego more than anything is having the respect of the whole world. The ego can't handle that because it's not real. So the ego has to be dismissed. So anytime you get Pluto involved, that planet, the events of that planet are where the person's going to learn to let go of their ego attachments. But it's not like they do it fully and become this amazingly great person. They're constantly challenged for that. And they'll do it in little steps.
And is there other things than just letting go of the ego by Pluto? Is there other jobs that Pluto will do, or is it simply to...
Pluto is just to smash the ego. First, we get individualized. We become secure as that individual spark of God.
Okay.
After that, we can truly start connecting to God. Look what happens to people who aren't psychologically secure, who try to connect to God. They knock on your door and hand you pamphlets, and they drop bombs on other people who have different religious views. That's what happens. Trying to connect to God before we're psychologically healthy doesn't work very well. All it does is create dogma and hypocrisy and arrogance.
Okay.
So we have to finish Uranus is after Saturn first for a reason. We have to become individualized. Most of what people think is spiritual work is psychological work. Once we become individualized and we're secure as we are, we're not playing games, we're not compensating, we're not being bullies because we feel weak, we're not doing anything for praise because we feel like a wuss, you know? When we're just being ourselves, comfortable in what God made us, we're individualized. At that point, we can truly start connecting to God through Neptune. But until then, we can't because it's all fake. We're lying to ourselves. How can we have a relationship with God? You can't, right? If you're living a lie, you can't connect to God, which is the truth, through Neptune. Mm-hmm. After we start connecting to God, then there's still something separating God from our consciousness, and that's our ego. And that's the final thing that has to go, which Pluto takes care of.
Yet in the Vedic sense, they also talk about Saturn destroying your ego.
Saturn is the planet that takes away the things that your ego is attached to. Okay? Only the ego has the right of willful death. In the Mahabharata, Bhishma is the ego. He should rule the kingdom. He didn't get to. He should be all powerful. He has no power. That's what the ego's like. Has no power. But he had the boon of willful death. He could only die when he wanted. So, no matter what we get taken, no matter what we lose, God can take away everything we own, everything we want, everything we hope for through Saturn. Takes away the mind. But only the ego can kill the I. And that's what he does. That's what we can choose to do at Saturn. If we do that, we get to Uranus. Okay? In a psychologically healthy way. But then there's still an aspect of us that sees ourselves, even after we start connecting to God, we still see ourselves as a separate entity from God. Even if we're sitting in God's lap, there's still something separating us, and that's still the ego. And different people, that ego's hanging on to different degrees, of course, right? Mm-hmm. Pluto's here to reduce that degree, okay? Now, what happens is, and what makes all these planets really impact a person really painfully inside, because oftentimes the most painful things will happen to people when they're having outer planet transits. And oftentimes the things that are most painful to a person are the things in the chart the outer planets influencing. So if you have Pluto in your 7th house, especially right on the cusp, relationship's going to be extremely painful. Why? Because what hurts? The ego hurts. And Pluto's out there to get the ego. Whether you have a good marriage or bad marriage, it's going to be painful for the ego to be there. I mean, a good marriage can be an extremely painful place to be, you know? The ego has to learn to live within the confines of that great marriage. Wouldn't it be nicer sometimes to have your spouse just turn into a crazy person that you could just get the hell out of your life sometimes so you don't have to deal with your ego?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because living with someone, you have, in a good marriage, lots of times, it's harder on the ego because you don't have the excuses to act out, right? And to misbehave. Mm-hmm. You have to smash that ego. Your ego wants this and it wants to survive, and you have to say, no, the ego's not allowed to do this. So whatever the outer planets are influencing will take on a different note. Pluto is going to be painful. Anything that influenced by Pluto in your chart is going to be way more painful because what hurts? The ego hurts. That's the only thing that hurts. Anything influenced by Uranus is going to be where you're going to have the most fun. It's going to be the best part of your life. Uranus is you just being in this creative rush.
So when they say Uranus is about sudden things happening, is that something that we need to take into account and study the natal chart, that let's say if Sun is conjunct Uranus, suddenly something will happen to your father? Is that... I'm saying this from the Western point of view.
I would never use the word suddenly for anything. With Uranus, so often there's an undercurrent of something. Like, for instance, 2 years ago, I had Uranus hit my Mercury in the 8th house of the occult. So the Lagna Lord in the 8th makes me an occultist, right? Into astrology and stuff. Well, 20 years ago, I was doing card reading and teaching card reading. And I've kept it up since then. But then 2 years ago, Uranus hits my Mercury. And boom, all of a sudden, all these new ideas start coming up about cards for me. Okay? Now, I could say all of a sudden, but that's not really true because I've been contemplating that for the last 20 years. You know what I mean? So you can't say it just happened all of a sudden. All of a sudden, it became something more important to who I was. But more importantly, because of the events that were going on in my life, getting back into the cards helped me deal with my psychology and getting more healthier with my individualization and the events happening in my life. So it was a Uranus event that it very much changed my consciousness, and it was cards. But the Uranus didn't make the cards happen. it made the fact that I got into the cards at a time when it was going to change my consciousness a lot. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
But it had been there the whole time. So what I'd say about Uranus, it's boiling inside you. You have a need for, say you've gone through 10 tough years where you're hating life. Every day you hate yourself. Every day you can't stand looking in the mirror. But underneath that, there's this little fight going on. There's this little party that says, no, I'm not going to admit defeat. I'm not going to get on drugs. I'm not going to shoot myself, you know. There's part of me here that's beautiful, you know. And then Uranus comes, and all of a sudden you discover that beautiful part in yourself, and you start being happy again. You understand?
Okay.
But it builds up. So Uranus oftentimes has this build up until finally the pressure is so great it just comes out of you.
Okay.
And it really is it can be very eruptive. A lot of times they like to say Pluto's eruptive.
Mm-hmm.
Pluto's more like vomiting. So Pluto's like your ego's getting smashed and smashed and smashed. Pluto comes along, and now you have to deal with all that smashing. You have to purge all that negativity of it. Same way, if you get a disease and you've been eating Twinkies and Coca-Cola for 20 years, and you fast, you're going to purge all those toxins out and feel really bad and get headaches and vomit and who knows what else. That's what Pluto does. We take the pain in, and then finally we get sick of the pain and we want to purge it all. And with that purging, we purge the disease of our life, which is our ego attachment, along with it. It's this huge purging. Uranus isn't like that. Uranus is this beautiful little thing, this little light that won't go out, this flame that keeps burning even though life is killing us. Or
maybe the negative image that the Western concept has put out of Uranus, it's not what you really are following.
No, they say it gives sudden things. It gives things that are not normal.
Yeah.
It creates taboo things, anti-cultural things. And all those are true to a degree, but not really. Uranus just makes you do something that you weren't feeling secure enough to do before.
Okay.
And it doesn't even make you do it. You're doing it anyway, and it coincides with the Uranus transit or something, because you're finally willing to be what you always were more, even though it's non-conventional. See, we're all meant to be unique sparks of God. We're all meant to grow into more and more unique individuals. We're not supposed to be black and white all the same. That would be boring for God. Why would he make this happen if we're all going to be that damn boring, right?
Yeah.
We're all meant to be unique aspects of God, unique manifestations of God. And Uranus helps us become that. And that means being different. But Uranus we already are different. We are what we are based on our charts and the concrete planets when we're born, right?
Yeah.
When we take the next step in becoming that thing we are is indicated by Uranus transit. But what that unique thing is indicated by our charts. So, like, for instance, go back to myself. I got into astrology originally when Uranus was opposite my Mercury.
It activated that Mercury.
Well, not exactly. What it was is I became a secure enough person to do this super weird thing in a culture that didn't acknowledge it, with friends who couldn't understand it. You know what I mean? I became more of an individual. I became who I always was. If you look at my chart and you know how to judge career, you'll say, yeah, he's going to be an astrologer. But being an astrologer or being whatever we're going to be, we have to be more secure, right? We have to develop into a secure person before we become what we are, right? Uranus just shows the times where we become more the secure person. And because of that, we become more who we are. But the fact that Uranus affects my Mercury does not make me an astrologer. You know what I mean? Otherwise,
it made you realize it, I guess, or it made you.
No, it's when I became the individual more that I was meant to be, which is an astrologer.
Yeah.
The reason I'm an astrologer is because of what my normal planets are saying. It's because what K2 is doing. It's K2 who is the astrologer connected to the 8th house of astrology through its Lord Mercury.
Yeah.
It's not gonna. Uranus didn't make that happen. What Western astrologers will say, oh, you've got a strong Uranus, you're going to be an astrologer. It's like bullshit. I can give you thousands of charts with Uranus hitting lots of things, and none of them even know what astrology is.
Yeah.
Sure. every astrologer in the West who does astrology is going to have strong Uranus.
Yeah.
Because that's part of them being a different individual in the West, right? But that Uranus never made them an astrologer. It was K2. Only K2 can make you an astrologer.
So now let me give you an example where these things wouldn't be counted, and correct me if I'm wrong. If let's say you're going through Jupiter Mahadasha, and Jupiter is connected to Uranus in the fourth house, what you're saying, do not say anything where your Jupiter is going to be affected by Uranus for the 16-year period, right? Jupiter's not doing that at all.
It's going to do what Jupiter is.
Okay.
And say you're going to...
Uranus does not have any impact on Jupiter's activated time.
Nope. And say you see that Jupiter there and you go, oh, your Jupiter happens to be with Uranus. And I've already predicted that Jupiter is going to put lots of money in your bank because it's in the fourth house and it's in good dignity or whatever. And you're going to say what it's also going to happen is as you get that money in the bank, you're going to be more insecure. You're going to grow into a more secure individual because Uranus is with Jupiter. Having that money in the bank is good for you because it's going to help you grow into a more secure person, which is one of the goals of life. You understand? Let's say
but you just said that you having Uranus and with Jupiter, you will get money in Jupiter period.
No, you get money in Jupiter period because Jupiter's in the fourth house of banks.
Oh, okay. So Uranus is not saying that I will give you money.
No.
It is simply the secure part that is coming.
Yeah, first you make the prediction. You say Jupiter in the fourth house is going to give you money and happiness.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and then you say, oh, but Uranus is there. So the effects of this money and happiness will be you growing into a more secure person.
Ah, I see. Okay.
What happens to a person with Jupiter and Saturn in the fourth house and they get money? They get money and they worry more and more about somebody taking their money.
Yeah.
They get money and they worry more and more about people only liking them for their money. Whereas Uranus there, you get money, Jupiter gives you the money, but when your friends come and ask for money, you don't feel like they only want you for your money. You're not measuring yourself against your money. You understand?
Yeah.
It's what's happening inside that determines it. Whenever Saturn's involved, what's happening inside is we're seeking ego-centered validation out of it. We want to be important and we want to take control and we want to have power because we have something now. We want to compensate for insecurities and our lack. Uranus does the opposite. He's like, the more I have this I get, the less insecure and the less lack I'm going to have. I'm going to grow into a more psychologically healthy individual. Because think about it, when we're not psychologically healthy, what do? We blend in. You know what I mean? We try to act like other people.
Yes.
Or we say, no,
I'm
not
cool. I want to buy that same car and the clothes and be like,
yeah. Or we'll say, no, I'm not going to be like that other person and be like everyone else who says they're not going to be like that person. Right?
Yeah, you can't escape then.
You're not being an individual, which is what Uranus wants us to be. We only can be an individual when we're psychologically healthy. And any planet influenced by Uranus, any house cusp influenced by Uranus, is a house cusp planet that's going to, as we get it, is going to help us become more of an individual.
Okay.
Okay? Like I have Uranus actually opposite my Mercury, which rules my K2. So the study of the occult has helped me become a more secure individual. If Uranus hadn't been there, I still would have been an astrologer, but it wouldn't have been as meaningful to me in an inner sense because I wouldn't have changed because of it. It would have made me a better being. You know what I mean?
So let me then experiment this here. So I see a chart. I see Jupiter in the fourth house as Mahadasha is running, Pluto sitting there. I'm like, you'll get the money, but receiving that money will break your ego.
Getting that money is going to create all kinds of ego games in your mind that are going to become painful until you let go of your I consciousness. You let go of your selfishness.
So then Jupiter is conjunct Neptune in its Mahadasha. Getting more money will make you feel more inspired.
It'll help you connect to life better, help you connect to others better.
I see. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Now I'm starting to get it.
Yeah. So you have to look at it in a completely different way, only inward. And a lot of Western astrologers, they'll say, oh, Pluto's hitting Venus, you're going to get divorced. Well, The reason I say that is because people who come to astrologers have shitty lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a higher chance of people who come to astrologers to get divorced or have been divorced already.
Yeah.
Just a higher chance. People whose stuff works out in life doesn't come to astrologers, right?
Nope. Yeah.
So an observational astrologer would say, oh, Pluto's hitting Venus or Uranus is hitting Venus. Pluto's hitting Venus, your marriage is going to end. Uranus is hitting Venus. Oh my God, you're going to break out of your relationship, do something crazy, meet somebody, have an affair. That's what they'll say, right?
Okay.
And, and in a chart that indicates bad marriage, where when the person's in this constant state of ego battle in their marriage, or maybe it's just in it somehow to gratify their ego, yes, Pluto, that might indicate the time. But it'll also be indicated in the dashas. You can't just say the marriage will end because Pluto's there. All you can say is Pluto hitting Venus shows your ego is going to get broken in relationships. For people with bad fate, that means their marriage ends, which are the people that come to the astrologers. But only a fool would predict end of marriage because Pluto's on Venus. They would say, oh, your ego is going to get smashed in love now. What does that mean? Oh, wow, your sublord is debilitating the Navamsha and it's Venus. Wow, you're going to get divorced, right? So we have to predict it the way we always predict it. And Uranus too, Western astrologers love saying Uranus makes you just want to break free from your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't. Uranus helps you become a healthier individual in your love life when it hits Venus. In a good marriage, your marriage gets better. You keep your marriage and you're a healthier individual in your marriage. But then if there's the dashas and so on indicating you lose your marriage, then you lose your marriage, and through losing your marriage, you learn to become a healthier individual in relationships. So the lesson, what you learn, the change upon your consciousness and being, that's all Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto will show right. If you use it for anything else, it's guesswork. Now, with that said, it can still be sometimes the easiest way to predict. Most of the time when somebody comes in and has a hard Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto hit their Venus, they're usually going to break up. Why? Because they're in a shitty situation to begin with. Yeah. But that's only because we're dealing with the spectrum of people who regularly get beat up and have problems in love life who come to astrologers, right? Yeah. The number one thing women look at online who are not happy in their love life is astrology. Yes. So you bet any of that. So they already know they have bad astrology fate. Otherwise, they wouldn't be wasting their lives on the internet looking at astrology, right? Exactly. And it's funny, like 90% of the people who get my relationship consultation are women. Of course, yeah. They're the one who really want to know when is my relationship's going to happen. Yeah, the thing that men, the most common thing searched online by women is astrology and love for their love lives. Mm-hmm. The most common thing that men search for is porn sites. Yeah. All right. So it's just that's statistically how it is. Yeah. That's one reason the ladies are looking so hard for love, right? Yeah. But anyway, so the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto show when we make changes. I remember back in like 1997, I got done with my last huge outer planet hit that I'd had a culmination of like 5-6 years of just getting dredged. And I looked at my chart and I was like, not a single one for 3 or 4 years, not even a little scratch of an outer planet. I said, well, it's going to be a boring 3 or 4 years. And it was, it just kind of mellowed along, right? Yeah. And I was looking forward to those outer planets to come on and make me into a better person. There are things that forge us somehow into a better person. Neptune will do it by oftentimes connecting us to something deeper. But one of the things about Neptune, while in transit, it's still hard, and even in our chart, while it can be hard, the definition of connecting to something deeper is connecting to it beyond the material plane. So that could be learning to love something, or that can mean loving something that you don't concretely get. That creates a connection on something beyond, on a deeper level beyond the physical plane, right? Mm-hmm. So all of these planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, in transit can always bring some painful events. But when we get done with them, we always feel so much better. Usually they'll hit us 1, 2, or 3, 3 or 5 times. They'll retrograde, they'll hit us, retrograde, go forth. Neptune and Pluto, especially Pluto, will hit us, go back, hit us, go back, hit us again for a total of 5 times. It can take about 20, 22 months sometimes, almost 2 full years of Pluto joy. You always get the gift at the last hit. And what happens there, that's when you can grow into that happier person that that outer planet's trying to turn you into. But the ones before that can be difficult. And even with Neptune, even though it's connecting you to something on a deeper level, the first time Neptune hits, you might fall in love with someone, the love of your life. You fall in love with them so hard. Second time it hits, things aren't going right. Third time it hits, you've learned to love on a deeper level because you're not with someone. You understand? But if that happens because of a relationship, it's happening in the dashas too. Neptune's just showing what you're learning in the love, you know? That can also happen if you're married. People who are married for 50 years have Neptune hitting their Venus and hitting their 7th house, and they stay married, right? Mm-hmm. So when the first Neptune hit comes, they realize the deeper connection to love still somehow, even though they're in marriage. And one of the purposes of marriage is to train our hearts to truly love so that we can love outside our family in a spiritual way. You know what I mean? Because in the end, Neptune, whatever hits, we're trying to learn to do it on a spiritual way, not a physical way. So it's not, Neptune Venus is not physical love, learning to have better sex. It's learning to love deeper, even though there's no physical reason for it. So say you're with your spouse and you get a Neptune Venus hit, and she's always there for you, always giving you so much. All of a sudden, she goes and gets a job, and now she's not there for you all the time. Mm-hmm. But you have to learn how to love her, even though she's gone. And you love her, and you make a deepened connection to her where you're loving her deeper, even though she's not there for you all the day, giving you back rubs, cooking your food, going grocery shopping, looking pretty, and all that stuff. If, you know, a healthy marriage would allow that. But whenever Neptune hits us, whatever planet it hits, we're learning to connect to that something on a deeper level. With Venus, it means we're learning to connect to love on a deeper level, which means a deeper level than the raw, concrete, animalistic, physical level. And for people who live in an animalistic, physical sense, that's really painful. And for a spiritual person, though, it's the most beautiful experience ever. They could be in love with someone across the country that they know they're never going to see, and their heart's just like opening up, and they're loving everything in life more because of that catalyst of that person that they're never going to be with, you know? Yeah. So, and that happens. But then lots of times Neptune will just cause people not to get as much physical attention or gratification somehow, and that teaches them to love on a deeper level. But again, the event, you predict the event first, and then say, oh, and what you're learning from this event. And really, when people come into our office, there's one or two things going on. They're either getting smashed by an outer planet, or they're getting a Saturn transit. If it's a Saturn transit, they're losing the mind. God is taking away the things that are dear to them and hurting them somehow, right? Or cause them health problems. But that doesn't mean they're growing. They're just suffering their bad karma then, right? Yeah. When Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto step in, that's when they change as a person. What happens, though, is going to be indicated by the other transits, the dashas of the other planets. And so when people come in with an outer planet transit, if an astrologer wanted to, they could just focus on the outer planet and say, oh, this is happening because you're learning to do this, and give meaning to the event. And that's the best purpose of the outer planets, is to give meaning to the person's existence. Because do we really want our life to just be this line of events? Mm-hmm. When we just predict events, that's what we're saying. We're saying, oh, you're going to get a house, you're going to sell your house, you're going to buy a bigger house, you're going to lose that house, get a smaller house, you're going to have a kid on this and this day. Yeah. And who cares, really? You know, that's not living. Living is, holy shit, I had a kid and look how much I changed, right?
So what you're saying, so if somebody is an atheist and they become completely religious person, it may really happen due to the outer planets hitting their 9th house or 9th lord versus some Mahadasha coming in or some transit of Jupiter, Saturn coming in under the 9th house?
I wouldn't even say that, because if a person's an atheist, it's going to be shown by their conscious planets. That's how their consciousness is working, right? If I'm an atheist, they go to a spiritual person, they're going to have some good planet transits and dashas that awaken them into a spiritual understanding, right? Okay, but is that spiritual understanding going to really change who they are? Or are they just going to be the same piece of shit they were, but now they're not an atheist, right?
Yeah.
Are they just doing different karmas?
Yeah.
Are they doing atheistic karmas or spiritual karmas? Who cares? When's the change happen to them? That's what the outer planets show. Got it? Okay. Otherwise, it's like saying, oh, you're a janitor. Oh, and one day you get a job and you get elected mayor. You went from janitor to mayor. Well, does that change who you are? That just changes your karma, right? Your actions. The outer planets determine our karma, our actions, right? And the outer planets show our desires. As the dashas wake in our mind, we have desires for certain things, right? And we get attracted to certain things. But the outer planets show us how we change into better people. So if when the person goes from janitor to mayor, if he has Saturn crossing his sun, he just gets all proud.
Yeah.
If he has Uranus hitting his sun, he becomes a much more secure, healthy individual who has more to offer to everyone in his life, who's going to play less psychological games, who's not going to get perturbed when you look at him wrong the way he used to. Different people, either case could happen, you know? One person, they move up the food chain, all of a sudden they become this arrogant person. Another person moves up the food chain, they become a better person. Why is that? Because of the outer planets. If the outer planets are coming along, a person's being turned into a better person through either becoming a stronger individual, through connecting more deeply to life and God, or through shedding the ego of Pluto.
Okay.
Depending on what outer planet it is. And so those are the times where we're really living, because the definition of life is to evolve.
Right.
And we evolve when the outer planets hit us, you know?
Okay.
And all you have to do a search in Scala. Just search your outer planet hits. Search every 30-degree one. The most important ones are the opposition and the conjunctions and the squares. Those make your ships bigger gears internally. But even the 30-degree ones, you know, just 30 degrees for every sign can cause a big shift in you. And what's interesting about outer planets, though, and this will prove my point, a lot of how much changes in your life when an outer planet hit, it's all based on the dasha. If, for instance, a person recently had Uranus hitting their Venus, their dasha didn't affect their marriage life at all. Nothing changed in their marriage life. They didn't do anything new. Nothing changed in their marriage life. But they became more secure in their capacity to love and have a better marriage, because they're a better person in their marriage now, you see?
But let's say if they were going through the dasha of the 7th house or the 7th lord, and then Uranus was hitting, would there be even a bigger change then, or bigger security?
Then there would be a change of event. Okay. And coinciding with that change of event, the person will become a healthier person in their love life.
Got it.
Now, the key word is healthier. I'm not saying healthy.
Yeah.
Okay. Healthier. Takes 1 million years of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto revolving around us to turn us into a healthy, completely spiritualized person. Who knows how long we've been going on, right?
Yeah.
So it just makes us a little better than we were before the transit. And different people, that means a lot different things. For a person with a healthy chart, who's got good Dharma yogas, who doesn't have all their Dharma yogas afflicted, who's got strong marks of individuality, they grow by leaps and bounds when the outer planets hit them. Like, they have these huge awakenings. When people have, you know, troubled charts with troubled moons and troubled suns and are mired in the egocentricity, those outer planets come, they hardly learn anything from it. They just get a little chip. They just get a little brief polish, and that's it. And after they're done with it, there's hardly anything even noticed. So there's a huge difference in how much these planets affect a person. As a person gets closer to the end of their evolution, huge differences when these planets hit them. So, and the outer planets won't show that. We see that by the personal planets. So if you were to study like the outer planet transits of saints, you would see these were the times when they just, their lives changed, their whole consciousness changed, you know, where they direct their whole life towards something else, their whole consciousness changed. Whereas another person, they just notice that they're feeling miserable for a year and they get done, they hardly feel any different. But they are a little different, always a little bit. So you don't want to predict, oh, you've got Uranus hitting your Venus. When you get done with this year, you're going to be ready to have a good relationship. No, you'll be ready to have a better relationship than you've ever had.
Now, when you're connecting the dashas with also these outer planets, is it only Vimshotri dasha, or can someone even use like Narayana dasha and Chara dasha, Kalchakra dasha to make these changes?
Any dasha you're using, when a planet gives an event and it's connected to an outer planet, the goal of that event, the evolutionary goal of that event, is to teach them that outer planet on another level, you know, better. But I wouldn't predict it to happen right in that dasha. I would predict it to happen when the outer planet hits it in transit.
Hits in transit, okay.
And it might not. It might be in another dasha that they do that.
But then have you seen it working where when they were in, let's say, Chara dasha of the 9th Lord sign, and then Uranus was hitting some 9th Lord planet, change came, or especially only when Vimshotri dasha was studied?
You could use any dasha.
Any dashas, okay.
Any dasha. If a planet's given an effect, it's going to create a concrete event, right?
Yeah.
Then if there's an outer planet hitting at the same time, that concrete event is going to be way more important for them. Why? Because it also changes them inwardly. It doesn't make the concrete event bigger. It makes it more important. Got it?
Okay.
And you will see that a lot of events coincide with outer planets because the outer planets are constantly hitting us. You know, we might have a period for a few years we don't get hit, but if you search all your 30-degree transits, you're going to see a big list of outer planets. You're constantly getting hit by something. You might get a year break every once in a while, but an outer planet will hit you 3 times, takes a year. Sometimes it'll take almost 2 years if it hits you 5 times. So we're constantly getting bombarded by these. And if we want to help the person understand what they're learning through the event, focus on the outer planet. And that's really the most meaningful thing. It's not what the person most immediately needs to know. If you're sick, you need to know if you're going to get better next month. That's a concrete prediction. But then we can also talk to the person about, oh, and by the way, there's this outer planet transit, and this sickness is going to help you become a stronger individual. For instance, there's a great artist who never did art until he got appendix and was laid up. And somebody brought him some paints and he started painting. And when he got out of bed, he's like, I'm going to be an artist, you know?
Yeah.
That's when he realized, God made me an artist. That's who I really am. But it took being sick to become who he was, an artist. That was the event that was happening when he realized he was an artist. And you can't draw a connection between the event that's happening and what you realize about what you are, right? Any event that's happening when an outer planet transit happens is an event that helps you understand who you are more. And that could be a good event, a bad event, a related event, or a non-related event. It's the event that the dashas are showing.
Now, do you also look at the same concept with the divisional charts like Navamsha, Sastyamsha, Dasamsha, or you just feel like we should just stick to the birth chart when we're like...
I stick to the birth chart.
Okay.
And I focus on transits with outer planets mostly.
Okay.
I never personally, this is just my personal, and the reason is because really with Vedic astrology, there's so much we can do.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I personally focus on Lajitadya Vashtas and concrete predictions. I focus on concrete predictions because people think knowing their future is going to make a difference. and it's fun for me to make a prediction. It's the only reason I do it, because it's fun. It's challenging, you know? Every time you get a prediction, it's like you put a mark on your bedpost, right?
Yeah.
And so put a mark on your altar, right? But I use the Lajitadiya Bhashtas because the Lajitadiya Bhashtas, which are from Parashara, that tell us how friends and enemy planets interrelate, they show us how the person's thinking. Is the person thinking in a way that will provide for happiness or unhappiness? That's what the Lajitadis are doing. Regardless of the event, you can have a wonderful event and the person's miserable, right?
Yeah.
Happens all the time. Or you can have a bad event and the person's happy. Why? How they're thinking, which is the Lajitadiya Bhashtas. So I really focus on those. I don't care about the outer planets in the birth chart. I'm not that concerned about what planet's going to bring about their individuality, and what planet's going to destroy their ego, and what planet's going to help them connect to life and God more. Because that doesn't help me to talk to them about that as much as me talking about their actual conscious behavior that's making them miserable every day of their lives, right? And that's the Lajitadiya Bhashtas. I want to understand their conscious behavior. I'm seeing how their brain, when a guy looks at a girl, I look at the Lajitadiya Bhashtas and I see how his brain is thinking about having a relationship. And right away I know how fulfilled he'll be in that relationship. And then I can predict it, and I can say, yeah, you're going to have the best relationship you're going to have starting next June. But I already know he's not going to be happy.
Yeah.
Because of how his brain is approaching that relationship in Lajitadiya Bhashtas. That gives me what I want to work with the client. I could also say, oh yeah, and I would like to look at the outer planets and see what if you're gonna in your chart, if you're gonna grow a certain way from relationships. But I'm not that concerned about that, because that's going to happen all unconsciously. It's going to come from within out.
Yeah.
I don't have any business there.
Exactly.
But in the counseling situation, I'm working with their conscious mind. And I want to inform them how their conscious mind is making them less happy right now. However, they won't make any improvements into their conscious thinking until an outer planet happens. In transit. And so I look at them when I'm concerned about what a person's going through in transit, so I can see when they're actually going to take my advice about looking at life differently. Because I know they will not take it until an outer planet comes along. Doesn't matter how much good advice I give them. I can say, look, this is how you need to behave to have your love life work. You're approaching relationships wrong because the moon is aspecting Venus. And until you change that, you're going to not be happy in your love life. I know they won't change until Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto hits their Venus, their moon, or their 7th lord, or 7th house. I know they're not going to get better.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
Then they'll get better. And it'll happen of its own accord. But maybe something I said will help it come more, you know?
I see.
So we're working on so many different levels with the person. Every astrologer has to decide what level they want to focus on. In the birth chart, I never look at the outer planets. Not that it's not a good thing to do. It's because I'm so enthusiastic. The most important single astrological tool is Lajitadiya Bhashtas. Because how our mind is governing our lives is key. And also, it's how our mind is governing our lives that ultimately determines the events. So Lajitadiya Bhashtas also let us see the events. But more important than that, it lets us see how fulfilled we'll be with an event.
I see.
You know how people constantly ask for the prediction. When am I going to get this? They're approaching that event thinking, when I have that thing, I'll be happy. That's not how life works. If you're unhappy before you have that thing, you're going to be excited when you get the thing, and then you're going to be unhappy after finishing being excited.
Exactly.
If you're lucky, you'll be excited for 6 months if that person is really good in bed. If it's anything else like a car or a house, you won't be excited for more than 4 weeks.
No.
And then you'll be back to where you were. So why should I waste time predicting the event when we got to get your head screwed on straight, so when the event happens, you can actually enjoy it?
No, like I get emails where they say, I am so miserable. I haven't found the love of my life. And I just think that life doesn't want me to be happy or successful. And I'm reading that, I'm like, Well, the happiness is right there if you want to be, but they're thinking that relationship is what they're really going to make them feel successful and happy and
Yeah, or money or power or job or
yeah.
children.
And when they get it, they're going to continue that energy because
they're not happy.
They're not happy.
Because ultimately, there's only one thing we can be happy with ourselves.
Yeah.
And thinking anything else can make us happier than that is a lie. Anything else will make us excited for a little while.
Yeah.
Anything we get will make us excited. And that's why people want to constantly get new stuff, new car, new house, new bed sheets, new couch, new TV, new girlfriend, new mistress, new kids.
Yeah.
Yes, new that, new. To stay in that constant state of excitement.
Yeah.
But that's not happiness. Happiness is in our natural, unexcited state. And for a lot of people, that's such a negative place to be. They'll run around like crazy avoiding that state. And the minute they get to where they settle down, they'll go to sleep. They don't want to go to their natural state because it's that depressing. And nothing we can have in life will change that. It'll only make us excited.
I see. See, you explained it so perfectly. I mean, I feel like I don't even want to see a chart of example, but if you want to show an example that you were talking about, I would love to.
Okay, so let's just look at an example here. Let me figure out how I show you my chart here. How would I show you it on my computer?
Sure.
You can share the screen or something?
No, once you share it, it automatically comes.
Oh, I need to hit share screen.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you can see my screen now?
Yeah.
All right, so this is a chart of Hahnemann, okay? Hahnemann, not Hahnemann, from Maha or from.
Are you able to make this a Northern Indian style?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no,
Yeah.
I got better. I got both. Okay. So this is Samuel Hahnemann, who's the doctor who developed homeopathy.
Okay.
So he has a moon Mercury conjunction.
Yeah.
The best healers either have moon Mercury in conjunction or trine, or they have one in the sign of the other or something like that. That's Gemini.
Okay.
Because moon Mercury joined with self sun makes him a doctor. Okay? Now, Neptune is aspecting that moon and Mercury. So him being a doctor helped him connect to life in a much deeper way. Him being a doctor and studying disease and healing people actually helped him see the divine in life. He connected to God through his practice of medicine.
So wait a second, you're saying that Neptune has a 9th aspect.
Okay, you want to use Tajika aspects. Tajika aspects are trine, opposition, conjunction, and semi-sextile. Semi-sext and square. Square is 90 degrees. Trine is 120. Sextile is 60 degrees. Okay? And that's it. Those are the important ones.
So sextile would be if Neptune was in the 3rd house.
Let's say an example here in his chart. Oh, you want North Indian, so I'll go to North.
Yeah.
Saturn at 28 Capricorn is sextiling exactly Ketu at 28 Pisces. That's a Tajika aspect. And Tajika, okay, from Varshafala?
Yeah.
Tajika aspect, okay? So in his chart, I'll try to use this one here. The Neptune is aspecting the moon and Mercury within their orbs. I use Tajika orbs. Sun has a 15-degree orb, Moon 12, Mars 8, Mercury and Venus 7, Jupiter and Saturn 8. So Neptune is within 15 degrees of Sun, it's within 12 degrees of Moon, and it's within 7 degrees of Mercury. So Neptune's aspecting all 3 of these planets that made him a doctor. So for him, the practice of medicine, being a healer, is what spiritualized him and helped him connect to life and see the universality of life. And you can really see it if you study his work at all. Compare that to the average doctor, right?
Yeah.
The average doctor sits there and prescribes drugs to patients who are hardly human, who are just these biological meat sacks, and gives them chemical drugs. And they're working in this idea that there's a good bad guy and I have to kill the bad guy in this meat sack, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of doctors, not all doctors, there's a lot of allopaths who are really kind, spiritual, loving people, and who you can get healing in their presence. But imagine your average allopath is just a drug pusher, right? So they're not going to have a Neptune hitting their Mercury, Moon, and Sun. They're not going to see God and connect to God and develop a relationship with Spirit through their healing practice the way Hahnemann does. Through his practice of medicine, he realized that God is underlying everything. And so that's an example of how this Neptune did that for him. But it doesn't make him a doctor. It's the Moon, Mercury, Sun conjunction that makes him the doctor. Why was he a super successful doctor? Because he has an exalted Sun, right?
Yeah.
And his other yogas, all the things we know that we study in the Sanskrit text. Neptune just lets us see he'll connect to God, to Spirit more deeper through the practice of medicine. Okay?
Okay. Oh, I was just being confused. I was thinking that they're in the sign of Cancer. You have that number 4.
That's the 4th Baba cusp.
Oh, okay. I got so confused. I'm like,
Sorry.
This person was okay, got it.
Yeah, so that was all in Aries, yeah.
Okay. And then how would you see Pluto and Uranus in his chart if you were to just get this chart?
Pluto is not that powerful. Let me show you Mark. I pulled up Mark Twain for that.
Okay.
We always think of Mark Twain as this funny writer guy who had a great life.
Yeah.
But when we look at it, you know, Pluto is with Moon. Pluto is 90-degree aspect, what we call a square in Tajika to Jupiter. Pluto is trine Mars within orb. It's trine Sun within orb.
Mm-hmm.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4 planets that it's making heavy aspects to. And Mark Twain was constantly going through intense inner changes in his life. All those planets dramatically changed who he was and helped him shed his ego. Jupiter, religion and children, right? When a child died, he had one of his kids die. It totally shattered him and he got ill. And it destroyed his ego. He didn't even want to live after that. That's a Pluto thing. Some people might have a child die, they just keep going. Mark Twain got ill, badly ill, hardly wanted to live. In that process, he killed his ego. And then he went on after that to do lots of things for girls of the age of his daughter and developed some special societies for these girls. So he kind of grew into a person who looked at children in a less egocentric way, meaning all children are important, not just my children.
And just to make it clear, if somebody's watching this, they have the same combination, it doesn't mean that their child will die unless they have the
yoga for the
yoga
child to die. Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, but the death of his child destroyed his ego and made him a better person who could identify with all children, you know?
Yeah.
It's an egocentric thing to think our children are better than or more beautiful than other people's children, isn't it?
Right.
But the average parent does, you know?
Yeah.
Mark Twain, with this, his consciousness changed to where he saw the beauty of all children. Okay? So he also has Pluto joining his moon. Pluto's aspecting Mars, his Lagna Lord. So lots of things happening here. One thing interesting about him, with the moon here in the 6th, and with the 6th Lord combust in the 2nd house, along with the 12th Lord, he went bankrupt. He invested what was equal to $8.2 million in modern currency in some investments, some scientific investments. Didn't work out because right when it was about to be released, something came out that was simpler that did the same thing, and everything lost. He had huge debts. He invested everything. He had to file bankruptcy, and this was a huge blow to his ego. But after he got done filing the bankruptcy, he when he was able to, he paid everyone back he owed, even though he didn't legally have to. So you see, that's a non-egocentric thing to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see Pluto's involved in this. So we see how bankruptcy, sixth house, is going to destroy his ego and make him a better person. A person who's less egocentric. My money, my money, my money. I don't have to pay you my money because the law says I don't have to. No, he didn't do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, he didn't do that to some degree because of the nobility of some planets in his chart. The moon, Jupiter, Gajasara Yoga, right?
Yeah.
For one, okay? But the Pluto there shows us that the financial problems we see in his chart are going to break down his ego and make him a less egocentric person. A lot of people go through financial troubles and they don't become a less egocentric person. They become more egocentric. Next time I have money, I'm not going to share with anybody, right?
Yeah.
Mark Twain didn't. Financial losses turned him into a less egocentric person. He also has Pluto hitting his Lagna Lord, which shows us that the problems of the body, the Lagna Lord, will make him a less egocentric person. He struggled with health a lot. It made him a less egocentric person. It made him have less fear of death versus more fear of death. Sometimes people, when they start having ill, they get more and more fear of death.
Yeah.
For him, it got less fear of death. And a year before, he was born during Halley's Comet. And with a year to go, he was not doing well, and Halley's Comet was coming in the next year. And he said, I'm going to die when Halley Comet comes. And if I don't, that's going to be the biggest disappointment of my life, you know?
Okay.
So, and he died the day after Halley's Comet was closest to Earth.
Boy, was he an astrologer.
And lots of times when comets come, famous, important people die. Like Princess Diana died during a comet in 1997 or 98, 97. There was a comet when Princess Diana died. And when Mother Teresa died, if I remember correctly, they both died at the same time with a comet in the sky. Comets indicate the birth of great people and also them leaving us. So,
wow.
Mark Twain, he wasn't scared of death. He's like, I'm taking a ride to heaven on Halley's Comet, right?
I guess that's what it really means, right? I mean, the reason behind them dying when a comet comes is like a bus.
It's a bus.
Taking their...
The great souls come and go oftentimes during comets and these other very unusual astrological phenomenon.
Wow, that is very interesting.
These people that somehow have a big impact on Earth. So Pluto, the disease he had of his body, Mars, combust Lagna Lord, right? Mm-hmm. That causes you health problems. That disease is going to, and Mars is also sixth Lord, right?
Yeah.
But Pluto aspecting that exactly shows disease will destroy his ego. He doesn't become more scared of death, which is the scariest thing to the ego is death, right?
Yeah.
It makes him a better person by destroying his ego. But that wasn't like it was fun for him, you know?
Yeah.
Internally, it was painful. Pluto doesn't indicate disease. Disease is indicated by a combust first and sixth Lord, right?
Yeah.
In a Marika house with the Marika planet Venus. So we got a lot of Marika stuff adding up here.
And
right?
what kind of disease that he suffered?
He had all kinds of stuff, you know, and even when he wasn't even that old, he struggled a lot with his health and spent a lot of time traveling in Europe to try to get therapies and treatments and health baths and going to health spas where they would give him good food and fast him and stuff like that. Okay. So I don't remember the arrangement of them, but he had lung issues for one, K2 Saturn with Mercury. The K2, which is smoke with Mercury and Saturn, made him an avid smoker. He was always smoking a pipe. So K2 Rahu, they're the ones who create smokers. I find oftentimes K2 does it more often though than Rahu for some reason, especially tobacco, legal tobacco, usually indicated by K2. K2 Mercury's sun oftentimes will smoke, especially if it's connected to the second. Here, the second Lord Mars, or Mars is in the second house, right? The second house is what we shove in our mouths.
Yeah. Did he also have a beard?
Oh gosh, I'm sure he did on and off, whatever the times recommended, you know.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm sure he did because at that time there was time periods where people had beards.
Okay.
He had a mustache pretty much all the time.
Yeah,
I don't
Ketu
know
Saturn
about,
in the ascendant or linked to the ascendant can give like a beard or mustache all the time. So
yeah, sure, because Saturn has to do with hair. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that's a quick example. So
Okay.
it doesn't change the event. It just shows, is the event transforming them into a less egocentric person if it's Pluto, helping them connect to the divine if it's Neptune, and helping them become a more secure individual if it's Uranus. The events that do that are the only events that matter to us.
Mm-hmm.
The other events won't matter. We'll forget them. Like the client I have who slept with 400 women. He doesn't remember. But why should he? They didn't make him any different. None of those women made him different, right?
Yeah.
Except the one that he was in love with when he came into my office that it didn't work out with, right? Who he tried to have a relationship with that changed him and changed him internally in respect to his needs for women.
Oh wait, this was a client of yours?
A client had 400 women. He'd have days where he would sleep with 4 or 5 women on a single day.
Holy Lord.
He told me at least 400. He doesn't even know.
And was there like Rahu in the 7th house?
No, he had a yoga. If I don't remember it, but it has to do if the Shashtiamsha Lord of something is in Murdamsha, one will have like 400 wives, you know? Some crazy yoga. He actually had it. But none of the wives were meaningful, you know? None of the lays were meaningful except a couple that were happening when outer planets, because only the outer planets change us. If something doesn't change us, it doesn't have any meaning. We forget about it. If you write down every event that changed, that you remember distinctively, that you go, holy shit, this was an important time in my life, you'll have an outer planet going on during that event. Wow. And when the people says, oh, what about that thing or that person or that job, you're like, gosh, I hardly remember it because you didn't have an outer planet going on. There's no reason to remember it. It wasn't important to you. Because the outer planets act on our consciousness. And when our consciousness is being impacted, we remember what's happening around us, which are the events that the other planets create. So only use the outer planets if you want to look inside the person. Okay, like I was just, one other example I pulled up. I didn't even have time to remember looking at it. I haven't looked at this chart in a million years. Let's see, I'm going to pull up their transits from like 1990 to say 1995 or 1985, 1975, 1995 here. Take a second to calculate those up. So this is a 20-year period.
Yeah.
And can you still see the screen?
It's a frozen.
Yeah, it's doing something. It'll stop in a second, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Here, we can just talk for a minute while that runs, okay?
Okay.
So I'm pulling up a chart basically that had some outer planets going on throughout their life. Let's see if we can screen share now. I hope that's going to pull up. Let's see. Can you see the little box of outer planets in the middle of the screen where it says transit hit list?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So here's a person who we can quickly just kind of scan this. And at first you want to look at like conjunctions. Conjunctions, squares, and oppositions. 90 degrees, oppositions, and conjunctions. Because those two usually throw a person for a bigger loop. Those indicate big changes. Because that's when, you know, like if you look at the solstices and equinoxes, they're at those 90-degree points, right? That's where the sun literally changes directions. Goes from north to south, goes from more daylight to less daylight, and so on. So those are the critical angles where bigger things will happen. And you can see this person has a Neptune at the tender age of 15, has Neptune hit their Saturn, okay? And Neptune or conjuncts their Saturn over the age of 16 until they turn 17. So that lets us know that they're going to connect to life more by overcoming a lot of their fears, which is Saturn. Okay, they're going to melt their fears, which is Saturn, by connecting to life on a more deeper level. Okay, what was the event that happened? The event was their mom beat them up, threw them down the stairs. They went to the hospital. They didn't want to go home, so they snuck out of the hospital and started working as an independent person at a restaurant and never went home again.
Wow.
So you would never be able to predict that from a
Yeah.
Neptune conjunct Saturn.
Right.
But what happened is the person connected to life. They got embraced by life. They met people that they plugged into, and they melted their fears and insecurities, and they were all able to go out and live a life more free of fears. You understand? So their life changed. They'd been in an abusive situation with their parent their whole life. Their mom and older sister regularly beat them up. But this was the time they became secure enough and they connected to life in a way that they knew life didn't have to be like that, you know?
Yeah.
And melted their fear, Saturn, to where able to go out there and connect to life on a bigger way besides this abusive planetary relationship, right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest transit going on, okay? A few years later, they had let's see. Let me make sure I'm picking the right year here. And most importantly, let's see. Let me get the dates right. 20 years. Okay. Here's another important one. Uranus hitting Mercury. Uranus hitting Mercury always, I find such an important one because Neptune, Uranus is Vishnu, right?
Yeah.
So our understanding can grow which is Mercury, can grow so much, because what always limits our understanding of things is our predefined concept.
Wait, wasn't Uranus Brahma?
Uranus is Brahma, but Neptune, or Mercury, excuse me, is Vishnu, right?
Okay, that's what you meant. Okay.
So Mercury gives us the capacity for deep understanding. That's why it's a key planet for letting us see our capacity to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter gives us the religious devotion, but Mercury helps us understand things, to come to conclusions that make sense. Whether those are material conclusions or spiritual conclusions, it's Mercury that does that, right? So oftentimes when Uranus hits Mercury, people get ideas about the universe that validate them from not only a psychological point of view of Uranus, but also a spiritual point of view, because Mercury is such a spiritualizing planet, because it's Vishnu. Everything is Vishnu, right?
Yeah.
So learning that everything is Vishnu, we oftentimes will do on another level to greater understanding when Mercury gets hit in a spiritual philosophical person, which this person was. Mm-hmm. So when this person had Uranus square Mercury, they went out and did a fire walk. And when they got hypnotized to do the fire walk, and during that, they realized that everything is Vishnu, everything is one, right? Because they're walking on fire, not getting burnt. You understand?
Yeah.
Now, Uranus squaring Mercury does not predict the fire walk. It just shows a change of consciousness where a person understands that they themselves are not limited to this physical thing. As an individual, we're not just bones and matter, right? If we were, she wouldn't be able to do a fire walk.
Yeah.
Because a fire walk shows you the fire doesn't burn your feet because your feet are no longer tissue.
Yeah.
And the fire is no longer a flame. They both melt into Vishnu, right?
Yeah.
Which is Mercury. So the point I'm making, when Uranus hits Mercury, we often, as part of our individuality, we learn that we're not restricted or limited to this physical form, that there's more to us, because we're really not these bodies. We're Vishnu, which is the energy that manifests everything, right?
Yep.
I was maybe a little too crazy, but again, that's an extreme example where the person's consciousness changed. where they became a more secure individual by understanding Mercury, the truth of life, in that everything is energy, right? Everything is God, everything is Vishnu.
Yeah.
And at that point, they, as part of their individuality, they became a spiritual person because of that firewalk.
Wow.
But Uranus Mercury is never going to predict a firewalk, you know? But the understanding, all we can predict with this is you're going to understand yourself on a deeper, non-physical level, and that's going to validate who you are. It's going to make you more secure as an individual because it's Uranus transit.
Absolutely. Okay.
But Mercury, I love it when Mercury gets hit by any planet, any outer planet, because it always helps us come back to that truth of Vishnu, that we're not restricted to our physical form, to this concrete life. There's something more to that.
Yeah.
There's something underlying that, which is Vishnu, Mercury. And all understanding, I always tell people, I don't care what you study. You can study martial arts. You can study astrology. You can study sex. But if you study it with devotion, you'll see God in it. But the easiest science to see God in is astrology.
Astrology, yeah.
And that's why it's, of all sciences, it's the eyes of the Veda. The eyes to show us the truth. And lots of times when Uranus hits Mercury, people will study someone, have an experience that lets them see the truth of life, that God is underneath everything. And this was a really dramatic example of a person.
Now, one last question I want to ask you is, when you were talking about those aspect orbs of Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn have an 8-degree orb, is this something Parashara talked about? Because I thought Parashara is more about the full house system aspect.
That's the Tajika aspects from the Tajika system that we use in Varshafala.
Okay.
So, you know, we have the 16 Tajika yogas,
Right.
like the applying and separating yogas. Those are based on these orbs.
Okay.
And these are the very orbs Western astrologers used to use too. And they come from the Tajikas. The Tajikas were the Persians, and that astrology went into India and got preserved in India better than anywhere else in the world. Western astrology is based on Persian and Greek astrology, which is the same system as the Tajika.
Mm-hmm.
And Western astrologers used to use these same orbs. Until recent years, in the last century, Western astrologers have decided to make up whatever orbs they feel like using. But these are the scientific Tajika orbs. And I find they work really well with the outer planets. So I use them.
Okay.
And you just use the orb of the planet.
Perfect. Wow. This is what I needed. This is from after I did that very first video with you of Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, I was just in this dilemma, this confusion. Like, what am I looking at? How am I supposed to say something with using this? And now I just know. So thank you so much for bringing this here. And I'm sure everybody wants to now, new people definitely want to know more about you. So
can I give one more quick example?
Yeah.
On this chart. So this person had Pluto square their Mercury at one point.
Okay.
At the time when they started their Pluto squaring Mercury, they were living a very devout religious life. All they did was do their job as a healer and meditate. They wanted nothing to do with men. But at their spiritual initiation, they met a guy. And they ended up falling in love with that guy. And against their will, they fell in love with that person and realized that they had all these egocentric ideas about not being in love. Them abstaining from love was a completely egocentric thing. And Pluto put them in love and broke down all that egocentricity.
Wow.
So you see, this is a person that fell in love when Pluto hit Venus because their egocentric idea is, I'm not going to have love.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have love. See, that's an egocentric idea. That's no longer a spiritual idea.
Yeah.
A spiritual idea is God, God, God. Oh, I'm in love. Oh, I'm not in love. Doesn't matter. God, 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 right? But when we say, I'm not going to be in love because I'm going to meditate, that's an egocentric idea. And this Pluto-Venus broke that egocentric idea out of her consciousness, and through that, reduced the size of her ego. Okay.
Wow.
So it's these type of things that the outer planets do, okay?
Perfect. Thank
All right,
you.
sorry. Go
Now,
ahead.
And what was the website that people can go to learn more from you and your
Okay,
classes?
right now the best place to go is astrology-videos.com, where I have 600-700 hours of video. Plus, I've put up my entire old library of audios. So we're talking 200-300 hours of audio courses, including the Outer Planets course, the first 3 Gemini courses, just tons of stuff for them to get lost on.
And you also have the Lajitaji Avasta courses too, I'm sure.
I have and it's a course I really recommend. It's called Interpreting Avastas.
Okay.
A lot of people, when I taught them the Lajitaya Avastas, several people, because this is what they called it. People didn't know each other. They all called it the missing link of Vedic astrology. And it's pure Parashara.
Okay.
Lajitaya Avastas, because we're so used to looking at planets just in the context of benefics and malefics.
Yeah.
That just means easy and hard.
Yeah.
You know, making money is hard. So sometimes malefics help us make money, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the Lajitaya Avastas are based on friends and enemies. Friends help us. Friends make us feel good. Enemies get in the way. Enemies make us feel bad.
Exactly.
That's life. You know?
Absolutely.
So they're really critical, and they're just so simple and profound.
Well, I might have to bring you back again to just talk about the Avastas.
Okay, sure.
Great. So thank you so much, Ernest, for coming over.
Okay, my pleasure.